What's going on? In today's video, I'm going to cover every single difference between the Kodak Pro FZ45 and the FZ55. Now, like always, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to jump right into this video, but if it does help you out in any way, please consider dropping a like and subscribing to my channel. Now let's get into it. So first up, I just want to say, these are extremely similar cameras in pretty much every way. I mean, obviously you can see they look almost identical with just some slight differences. So pretty much anything that I don't specifically mention in this video, you can assume is identical between these two cameras. So things like megapixel count, video resolution and capabilities, the general body style and shape, the LCD screen size and resolution, the general software and the menu systems on these cameras, all of that is identical between these. That being said, there are still some pretty big differences between these that could be a deciding factor for some people, and that's of course what we're going to get into right now. Alright, so the first difference between these is the zoom capabilities. So the FZ45 has a 4x optical zoom, going from 27 to 108mm full frame equivalent field of view, and then the FZ55 has a 5x zoom lens with a 28 to 140mm full frame equivalent field of view. So the FZ55 is going to offer quite a bit more reach on the long end with, like I said, 140mm full frame equivalent field of view versus 108mm. But the thing is, on the wide end, the FZ45 actually goes slightly wider. So that's going to be a little bit better for vlogging and things where you're going to need a really wide angle field of view. Now it is only a 1mm difference, so it won't be a substantial difference by any means. It might be slightly noticeable, but what will be noticeable is the extra reach on the long end with the FZ55. And so I'm going to give the edge to the FZ55 in that regard. It does have substantially more reach than the FZ45. Now, another difference in the lens department is the maximum aperture or the brightness of these lenses. So with FZ45, you're starting on the wide end at f3, and then on the long end, it goes down to f6.6. And then the FZ55 starts out at the wide end at f3.9, which is slightly slower, but then on the long end, it goes down to f6.3, which is actually a little bit faster than the 45 on the long end. That's a lot of numbers I just threw at you, but essentially, overall, generally the FZ55 is going to be a little bit faster, especially in the long end. But if you generally stick around the wide end, the FZ45 actually has a faster aperture, which is going to be better in low light. It'll have less noise and grain, and it'll actually provide a little bit better background separation, hypothetically. Now, I will show comparisons between both of these on the wide end and the long end, and try to show comparisons between background separation as well, because that could mean the FZ45 is slightly better for vlogging, when in general, the FZ55 is just a little bit more versatile for everything else. Alright, so this is 1080p 30 frames per second on the FZ45, also all the way zoomed out, so this is as wide of an angle as it goes, and I'm at like full arm's length away right now. But this is just to give you an idea of what this looks like and the sharpness, and then I'll go ahead and do the FZ55 next. So now let's switch to the FZ55 and see if we notice much of a difference. Alright, so this is the FZ55 recording in 1080p 30 frames per second, and this is with the lens all the way zoomed out at about a 28mm full frame equivalent, and it's also wide open at f3.9. So this is the quality and the field of view you're going to get. I'm in my car right now, so it's a little bit cramped and a little bit darker than usual, but it'd also be a good test of the dynamic range. So you can see it's really bright out there, it's dark everywhere else in here. You can kind of see, how good or how bad the dynamic range is with this. Alright, next up, this is probably the biggest single difference between these two cameras and probably the biggest deciding factor difference. So for batteries, the FZ45 takes two AA batteries. So you of course can get rechargeable AA batteries, which I have here, but generally these are going to be one-time use. Put some AA's in the camera, use it till it dies, throw them away and throw some new ones in. While the FZ55 actually has a proprietary rechargeable battery that charges inside the camera through the micro USB port. So realistically, there isn't really a better or worse option here. This is almost solely just based on personal preference. Now, when it comes to the actual battery life, the AA's will give you slightly longer battery life in the FZ45 versus the rechargeable battery. But again, you're going to be having to buy packs of these, cycling through them, or you can get rechargeables like I have here, versus just having this battery that you can just keep in the camera all the time and just basically use a micro USB cable to charge it. Again, I'm not even going to say which one is better or which one's worse. Personally, I prefer just a rechargeable battery like these, a proprietary one that I can just charge in the camera, and I can buy spares and stuff. But yeah, this is really one of the biggest deciding factors. Now there is one more difference that I'm going to get into next that kind of is affected by this, which I'll actually get into right now. So because of the battery differences, the FZ45 is actually a slightly thicker camera, obviously because it needs those bigger AA batteries. And so that gives the FZ45 a slightly deeper grip that's maybe a little bit easier and better to hold. but I do think it personally doesn't look as sleek as the FZ55. Not that that matters as much as, you know, the comfortableness to hold, but those AA batteries do definitely make the FZ45 a little bit bigger and also heavier than the FZ55. Now, if you're curious of the exact dimensions of these, the FZ45 comes in at 3.66 inches by 2.37 inches by 1.12 inches and weighs 116 grams. And then the FZ55 comes in at 3.6 inches by 2.23 inches by 0.9 inches and 105 grams. So the slightly smaller and lighter option. And so that brings us to the final difference, and then I'll get into my conclusion. So the final difference between these is, of course, the price. The FZ45 comes in at around $120, and the FZ55 comes in at $140, or about $20 more. So fairly similar pricing, about a 15% price difference. But is it worth spending the extra price for the FZ55? Here's what I think. First of all, based on the pricing in general, I do think there are just better options out there. If you generally just want to start learning about photography and get into photography and learn about cameras and really learn the basics of photography, I think there are a bunch of better options out there that I'll link down in the description. I also have some videos of great cameras that are under $100, under $200, under $300, and all of those are going to be actual interchangeable lens cameras, whether they're mirrorless or DSLRs, which in general are going to be a lot better for just learning about and getting into the art of photography. However, if you kind of already know what you want and you're just in the market for one of these two cameras, I would say generally the FZ55 is definitely worth the extra price. It just looks a little bit more sleek, it has the extra reach out of the lens, and it comes with that rechargeable battery that's just a little bit better for portability and traveling. However, if you prefer AA batteries and you'd rather just have a bunch of those with you that you don't have to worry about charging, you can just swap them in and instantly have a full battery pack. Or if you specifically want to do vlogging with these and you're going to have it zoomed out to its widest focal length pretty much no matter what, then the FZ45 might be the better option and you can save 20 bucks. But for everybody else, I think the FZ55 is generally just the better choice. But that's it for me. I hope this video helped you out. Let me know which one you're going to go with down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.